My Aunt Linda actually tried to physically block the door to the lawyer's office. When she saw me walking up for my grandfather's will reading, she leaned in close and whispered that I wasn't family anymore, and that charity cases weren't welcome at the big kids' table. You see, since the day my grandfather passed, she'd been acting like she already owned the keys to his entire estate. She changed the locks on his Victorian house before the funeral service was even over, and didn't even bother to tell me where the reception was being held. She assumed that because she stayed in his ear for the last 6 months of his life, she was going to inherit every single cent of his fortune, while I was left with nothing but old memories. When I finally pushed past her and sat down in the back of that cold, mahogany-filled room, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Linda sat at the front, clutching her designer bag, already looking like she was mentally spending the money on a new summer home. The executor, a stern man in a sharp grey suit, cleared his throat and opened a thick leather folder. He didn't start with the assets. He didn't start with the house. Instead, he looked over his glasses, scanned the room with a frown, and asked one simple, piercing question. Is the youngest grandchild present today? Linda immediately piped up, her voice trembling with fake authority, saying I had no business being there and that we should just proceed with her as the primary beneficiary. She told the lawyer I was just looking for a handout, but the executor didn't move an inch. He told the room that according to a secret codicil added just 3 weeks before my grandfather passed, the entire estate, the house, the massive investments, and the vintage car collection was contingent on one specific person being present and accounted for. My grandfather knew exactly what Linda was doing. He knew she was isolating him from the rest of us. The lawyer looked right at me, ignored Linda's gasps, and said, he left a note stating that the only person who visited him for tea without asking for a loan was the only one fit to manage his legacy. Linda's face went from smug to ghostly white as she realized she'd been written out of the main inheritance entirely. Karma has a funny way of finding you when you're being greedy. If you've ever had to deal with a toxic relative trying to steal your peace, hit that follow button and tell me your story in the comments.